Hello, and welcome once again to the accidentally named Free Thought Blog's Podish-Sortacast, where people who are used to writing instead try to talk live on camera. Today, that very used to writing is the topic of conversation. We're Free Thought Blogs. What even are blogs these days? Is the concept as dead as LiveJournal, which itself is somehow technically still alive? We'll see shortly. Today we have H.J. Hornbeck from Reprobate Spreadsheet, Christian Wager from Pro Science, Dr. Sarah from Geeky Humanist, P.Z. Myers from Feringula, and I'm Abby St. Brendan from Impossible Me. Does anybody have something they particularly like to lead off with about this? I believe HJ, you said you had something to say on the topic a minute ago?
I do indeed, yes. Although it's more of a generic kind of thing. I mean, if you've actually...
Aren't we all?
Well, yes. It's kind of the theme of the network, quite frankly. But yes, if you've ever encountered my blog, you'll probably note that it's one of those ones where the comments are turned off. And, I mean, it's been like that for years. People have, needled me about, like, hey, why don't you enable comments on your blog? I've seen detractors from elsewhere go like, oh, he doesn't have comments enabled on his blog. Scared of, alternative ideas and all that. It's kind of worth sort of discussing why exactly I disabled comments on my blog. Probably first off, starting with the fact that technically comments are not disabled. How it actually works is that for the vast majority of the things I publish, comments are indeed turned off, but there is one blog post where you can post comments on any topic you want. Surprisingly, not many people have cottoned on to that, and to be fair, it's because I really don't advertise it. Like, originally I had grand plans that, whenever I published something, it would actually sort of pop up as a comment and be like, hey, new thing here, here's something to, steer the conversation or something like that. Never really did get around to it. And it kind of contradicted my theory for why why I was sort of set up this commenting system in general. I have been a long time hanger around of blogs. I mean, Frangula, I've been around for, a decade or so at this point. I think I actually tracked down my original comment to be like a decade and a half ago. So I've seen the comments, I've seen the dynamics of content sections and all that. And quite often I find there's a wide distribution of people who do comment on there. There are some genuinely, knowledgeable people who chime in. Oftentimes I will find, PZ talking about some subject, and then an academic peer of him will pop in and add some more detail and all that. And you'll actually get, some very fascinating conversations within the first dozen posts or so. Almost always, though, after roughly that first dozen posts, somebody jumps on who either is blatantly trolling or doesn't understand what's going on, or just it really is sort of ideologically opposed to what's there. Certainly, if you pop onto some of PZ's more recent articles on transphobia, just like one or two comments down, a transphobe or TERF will pop on and start commenting. It's because they don't like the content and want to pick a fight, at least so I infer. And there's sort of this shelf life.
Oh, no. They're clearly, they've come to just ask questions and learn in good faith, obviously.
Obviously, sure, yes, yeah. Yeah, I've been around for long enough to know that utter bullshit. And in case, sarcasm over there. Anyway. So yeah, the question is now, how exactly do you deal with that? Because what happens once, those one or two, not necessarily even bad faith actors, but just bad influences perhaps sort of pops on, is that the conversation inevitably derails. It turns into an argument between people who want to push back on this person because they hold contrary ideas. Not necessarily, you could say it's simply contrary. You could argue that it's wrong. Personally, I believe in the case of PZ, it's almost always wrong rather than contrary, but whatever. Point is, though, the comment section after that point just really sort of becomes a long wank fest in many cases, where it's these bigots and people sort of pushing back against the bigotry and all that. And I find actually that it tends to sort of radicalize people in some sense. Like, it's very similar to how debates work. PZ's talked about this quite a bit. And
don't.
Exactly. Debates often are actually justification for the true believers. when you sit down and try to have a debate for someone, it's not necessarily that you actually have a genuine curiosity. In fact, in most cases, it's not the case at all. It's that you actually want to have your personal viewpoint justified. You're looking to become a martyr of sorts. And so, these jerks and assholes, bigots will pop into the comment section. They'll get scoured and they'll actually walk away going, wow, these people just cannot take true facts into their heads. They are totally brainwashed and all that. And it's a dynamic that I hate. And it really seems to radicalize people because this often comes up within these sort of spaces where, the hateful bigots hang out. This is actually
Well,
like something they do for fun, or it's so commonly mentioned within there about
but
comment sections and how things
doesn't that
go.
mean that by the time we'd see them, they've been radicalized? Like that would make that would
Mhm.
make good faith comments by the situation you just described not a radicalizing place, but somewhere that tends to get attacked by the already radicalized. Is it not?
To an extent, what makes me think it's a little well, it's six and one half dozen of the other. There is some ways that the people who are jumping in, they're already radicalized. I mean, given the fact that they're coming in with a hardcore hot take which disagrees with what the comment is, what the subject is, kind of tells you that they have some sort of motivation for being there, whether that's good or bad. I mean, I'm trying to be, neutral and all that. I have seen enough comment sections to know it's pretty much just bigotry, straight up. But anyway, yes, there is some radicalization there, but when you actually look in these spaces after the fact, they take the fact that they've been banned or they got pushed back as a badge of honor. And they reveal this to other people that, hey, this happened to me. It's not, it's basically a sort of show that, yeah, what I've been saying about these people, that it's free from thought blogs, for instance, is totally true. Because look what happened when I popped into the comment section and tried to have a reasonable debate. I got shut down. It 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 applies to radical people, but it also radicalizes them further. And I mean, I've been thinking for pretty much the entire time I've been a commenter on how exactly to stop that. One approach I've seen used is basically just to time limit comments. You've got 2 weeks, a month or so to comment, and then things shut down. Problem is, of course, if you look at all of these bigoted people who pop into the comment section, they usually pop in within a couple of hours of when the thing is posted. That's really not much of an influence. It certainly saves you from somebody sort of jumping in later in the fact. There's been a lot of threads on Frangula, for instance, where Christians will sort of leap into 6-month-old, year-long posts just to sort of dump some nonsense at the very bottom of the thread. And yeah, oftentimes because most people have sort of forgotten on, that sort of becomes the final word on the subject. That, haha, me refuting this evolutionary biologist has the last word, and nobody responded to me, ergo they must all agree with me, kind of thing, is my interpretation.
Can
Uh,
I push back a little bit on this?
sure.
I mean, there's nothing what you said that's wrong, but I don't think it's the complete wall of them. I mean, the good blogs, and Flamingo is a good one in that case. Actually, you also add something to the original post by the comment section. The commenters can add more knowledge. As you said, there will be some problematic commenters, but I think that's a different problem. I think that might be not a commenter problem as much as a moderation problem.
Well, yeah, and that's the other way to solve these problems is to have, very tight moderation. Essentially hover over the comment section, look for anything which might go bad or airy, and kick it out. And that works. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can have, an open comment section as long as you've got a really good moderation team. The problem is, of course, some people don't have a good moderation team. And me, especially starting out as, a blogger, moving from a commenter to blogger, I didn't have that. And on top of that, I knew my sort of personality, whereby, I would either sort of over police everything or, just let things go fallow. And that does not serve anybody's best purpose. I don't want these transphobic comments that would inevitably pop up on my blog. But I don't really have the time and effort involved to sort of do a good faith pushback on it. I can always just delete it, but that sort of feeds into the hands of the bad faith actors and bigots who are looking to be deleted. Where that really is sort of their goal in some sense, other than sort of spewing their nonsense indiscriminately.
Actually, I disagree. They don't look to be deleted. They look to be banned. And if quiet deletion is actually the best weapon, in my opinion, against those people.
It certainly works. I mean, PZ has been blogging a lot longer than me, and at this point, just deleting the comment is typically what he'll do. So yeah, I agree. It's there and it's powerful. The thing is, it's sort of you have to be an active monitor of that, and especially as a new blogger, I wasn't really sort of willing to put in the time and effort to do that moderation on it.
All right, let's put a pin in the comments thing for the moment, because I don't think anybody here is unfamiliar with the terrible cesspit that is unmoderated comments everywhere online. And that's a fundamental issue that affects both blogs and any other type of published media. Just have to look at YouTube to see when things have gone really bad. But let's talk a bit about what we are thinking that blogs are or will become. PZ, do you have something to say about that? As the long-standing and distinctly most famous blogger of us, actually arguably someone who made a name with blogging.
Yeah, I do have opinions. This is true, a few. What do I think? That blogging is simply people writing. I mean, that's all it really is. And it has been transformed in various ways over the years. So, for example, Twitter is microblogging, right? So what's different there is just being a little bit more spontaneous, a little, as HJ was saying, a little less filtered, a place where the trolls can romp freely, that kind of thing.
Not freely enough for their taste, judging by all the right-wing clones of Twitter that keep appearing and then dying like perennial fungus.
Yeah. So I would disagree with some of what HJ was saying about it, that commenting is part of blogging, and it's got issues, of course, that require different solutions to solve them. But when I look around the internet, what I see is blogs are actually thriving. It's just that people are renaming them. They're calling them Twitter, or they're calling them Substack, or they're calling them Medium. They're putting their own little label on it. But when you get down to it, they're the same thing. It's people writing dated posts and allowing...
Many of which swiftly come even more dated.
Yes. And then allowing people to make comments on them. That hasn't changed. We've just got a lot of people trying to steal the bandwagon, put their own name on it, and take it off in some other direction, I don't know, or free themselves from the moderation of tyrants like me that's going on.
And instead go to completely different tyrants on every individual location. I agree with you completely. This is actually the thing I was going to bring up myself, except you have thoroughly beaten me to the point. Blogging is thriving now. It's just the marketing changes. They don't get called blogs, they get called articles. People said, look, I wrote an article, and it's a blog. It's an essay full of usually opinions, often, but not necessarily acerbic. That's a blog. In fact, now it seems like the popular thing is for a proliferation of different blogging systems along various ideological lines. Arguably, free thought blogs was ahead of its time.
Yeah, I mean, I would still argue that there are some differences between blogging and just plain articles. I mean, if you go to something like wired.com or whatever, sure, they've got articles there and they've got a known battery of authors who are writing them. But I think the one thing that makes blogging is that it has that authorial continuity. You've got somebody who writes something, and they'll come back later and write more, and later and later. It's got that more of a diary sort of form than just a bunch of articles that are, syndicated on some site. So that, that one of the appeals. Oh, go ahead.
I think people from the newspapers and magazines claim also the lack of editors make a difference.
Yes, we should mention that there are no editors on blogs usually.
Well,
If there's an
We
editor,
actually-
something's usually
occasionally,
gone wrong.
yeah. Well, occasionally an entire sub-blog gets edited out, but that's different.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, on Free Thought blogs, we've had a few that we've basically kicked out. However, the thing is that when we do, we always tell them, we hate link rot. We would love to keep your blog posts there and just leave them intact. We just won't let you add to it anymore. And if there's a missing blog, it's because the author told us, no, just remove me entirely from your evil, wicked leftist site. There have been a few of those.
That does raise the question of whether we should be giving people the option of having their blog hang around forever on, I assume, our storage space, if they have been kicked out for inappropriate behavior, as unfortunately a few people have, as we all know.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I tend to prefer the way it's been done, where their desire to be removed is acquiesced to, simply on the basis of that causes less problems.
You can't fire me, I quit.
I mean, I
Yeah.
agree. If you want your blog off, you should be able to take your blog off. I do find some value in keeping some of that old stuff around. Certainly, one ex-blogger, who I shall not name, has made a go of trying to sort of change history for what exactly happened with how they were booted off the network and the details surrounding that. And it's been incredibly valuable to actually go back to the original threads and point to specific spots and say, no, this is actually what happened. This is, the entire comment thread showing what happened here. That's, what you're saying is not actually true. But certainly, if they do want to have their blog delete, fine, go right ahead. But, automatically deleting it is a bad thing in my opinion.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
saying it's good to unpublish them, not
yeah.
necessarily delete everything, just in case. I mean, I'm a huge data pack rat. So
right.
Yeah,
I would just put it into context here that one of the reasons we do unpublish or remove old blogs from the network is because we early on made the decision that your blog is yours. It is not owned by Free Thought Blogs LLC or anything like that. It's entirely yours, and you can choose what to do with it. However, like Abby was saying, we don't delete them. We archive them. We make them inaccessible to the general public, and we have to do that because sometimes, as people are saying, it comes back and bites us. So, for instance, in our recent lawsuit, it was very helpful that that person was kicked out, his blog was sequestered away, but for the lawyers, we could go back and we could pull back anything that they had ever written and
Fair point.
submit it as evidence. So it's, in general, it's all still there. Yeah, and also storage is not really a big problem. I mean, this is blogging. It's not like YouTube where you've got these massive videos. It's text.
well,
It
now
crunches down.
that brings up
Didn't
another
you say
question. Is it text?
Mhm.
That brings up another question. Is it text? Should it be text? How important is it that a blog is specifically just words? And if so, how many would be too many? How many would be too few? And there's quite a few blogs that we've seen just in practice on Free Thought blogs and lots of other places where the whole entry is just pointing to another piece of media or showing off a picture or a collection of pictures with a few words on it. We still call that blogs, don't we?
Why, yes.
I think pictures have been part of blogging since it started.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just part. I mean, that's just content. I think a radical takes static content. Movies and sounds is a little bit more complex because you have you kind of. I mean, when is it a blog? I mean, the blog is the kind of the format of the presentation. It's not necessarily content within it because it can, as you said, contain other stuff, YouTube videos and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard. But for me, for me, a blog kind of in its raw content would always be text and pictures.
Yeah, we've actually toyed with the idea in the past multiple times of bringing in people who are doing YouTube content, for instance. Just tell them, hey, just link to your YouTube video. That's your blog entry. You don't need to write anything. And in the interest of free expression, I think that's absolutely fine. Those have rarely been very successful for us, though. I mean, the ones I'm thinking of is that the original giant controversy, a certain Phil Mason. That was what he was going to do is he just does all these videos. So hey, I'll just put videos in there, and instead he decided to write these, taking advantage of the freedom of the written word, to write these long screeds against women and feminism and all. So he was gone. A more successful example would be the atheist community of Austin, which we hosted for a long time until they kind of imploded through no fault of ours, but they just kind of fell apart for a while there. But that's what they were doing, is just, if you go to their old blog, it was just video after video after video.
So
Was it
the definition, the loose definition we're working with here is a blog is a stream of just any arbitrary content created and or curated by one person?
Or
Or a group of people.
Sure.
Or a group.
I mean,
Good. I was wondering if anyone would remember Affinity is like 5 people.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, if we
Yeah.
go with the etymology, it comes from weblogs. So if you are logging stuff on the web, then yes, technically that should be a blog. I mean, it raises, I think, an interesting question about whether a YouTube channel counts as a blog or not.
Indeed. Backing off slightly from that, the question I think that might throw a little light on it is, do we think Tumblr is blogging?
We used to call it microblogging.
Yeah,
And I never
would say
understood
yes.
the difference between microblogging and blogging.
Sometimes you can get quite lengthy articles on Tumblr, actually.
Exactly. That's why I never understood. I mean, I could see why you could argue that Twitter is microblogging because of the length constraints, but but I never understood why Tumblr should be.
I feel like Twitter is less blogging and more somebody found a way to take the fundamental experience of standing on a corner and screaming angrily at strangers and turned it into a tech thing.
But there's also some very, very, very good comment tweet threads that really tells you a lot of very important stuff. So I mean, it's okay. I mean, you get good stuff no matter what medium you're using. So
Yeah. Although in the case of Twitter, what infuriates me is when people have those multi-port tweets. They go on for 20 or 50 little tweets. I just want to tell them, just go start a blog and link to it, because that would be much more digestible.
but you probably have a smaller as a new writer, you probably have a smaller reach.
Yeah. There's another thing that was just mentioned that I think is also an essential component, and that is the link. Being able to link to lots of other fellow writers and bloggers, being able to quickly go there. And in that sense, Tumblr is I think it is a really good blog, but it's got an unusual way of linking and acknowledging things to fellow writers.
Is a single page, group, or person's feed on Facebook a blog?
No, because Facebook is evil. That's just
There are evil blogs. In
Yes.
fact, I'd have to say, to a disturbing extent, Substack qualifies. So that clearly a fundamental moral lacking isn't really a definition of blog or not. So
I think
Facebook.
for me, the reason I would never consider a Facebook page or comment thread or a post thread a blog is the simple fact that the people who post it don't have any way to have any control of how it's presented to the reader. You don't know which posts are shown. You don't know which comments are shown. You don't know in which order they're shown. So the fundamental lack of control of the feed is for me what's making it not a blog. It's not a web log. It's not a log. It's just, I put something out and then I hope you are able to see it in some kind of reasonable way. And that's because the weird algorithm that Facebook used to show stuff to people.
This is getting really close to the classic argument, is a hot dog a sandwich?
I was just thinking this is like one of these memes about the different versions of things and what counts as chaotic good and lawful good and chaotic evil.
Of course it's similar to the is the hot dog a sandwich thing. I mean, if there's one thing traditional in blogging, especially on Tumblr, it's figuring out what to do with your wiener.
Okay.
Right. But I had a serious comment to make, and now I should probably just shut up with it.
Serious comment would be useful. It counters my nonsense. Please go ahead.
I was going to differentiate between Facebook or Twitter and blogs and say that a big part of it to me is how you go about finding stuff in the archives. If you put stuff on Facebook or Twitter, yes, it's there for all time, but you try saying, oh, someone posted this on March 21st last year, go back and try and find it from that date, you're going to find it a lot easier on a blog.
Yeah, the old traditional definition of a blog was simply a series of dated articles written and posted in chronological order. And if we use that old definition, no, Facebook is not a blog. But we were just saying that blogging is evolving. So I think,
it's evolving, but that doesn't mean we have to change the definition because something else comes up. Yes, it's evolving, but other things are also happening. Other platforms are happening. Facebook, Twitter, they're not blogs. They're other platforms that also allow people to present their thoughts, but in different ways that have different pros and cons.
Yeah, and Twitter also has the same problem Facebook does, that it just kind of interleaves a whole mishmash of different people posting stuff.
So we're thinking that a fundamental thing that makes a blog is the interface then, which it actually folds into an interesting point to what Christian said, that where a blog is something where you'd be expected to have some control over the presentation. Do they have control over the presentation on Substack and Medium? I genuinely don't know.
But I don't know either.
All I know is they always look the same.
They don't have control in the sense that they actually rule it, but if they post things in a certain order, they will show up in that certain order.
Oh, okay, so you didn't mean so much the layout and appearance as just the content in the feed, like the ordering and okay.
Yeah, and the ordering and whether it's shown or not, which is a big thing with Facebook. You never know if it's shown by
the UX, not the UI. Gotcha.
Yes, that would in our language that would be the difference. Yes.
Yeah, and there's also a minor bit of branding too. Like Towards Data Science on Medium has their little Towards Data Science thing at the top. So it's still a Medium post. You can tell just by looking at it, it's a Medium post. But there's this little branding that it's got, and that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, there's a limit, I think, to how much we can directly chew on whether or not a blog is a sandwich. But one of our other contributors, William Brinkman of the Bolingbrook Babbler, provided us a pre-recorded clip to include in this. HJ, if you'd be so kind.
Hi, I'm William Brinkman, the blogger behind the Bolingbrook Babbler and author of The Rift, my new novel, which will be coming out later this year. And I've been asked to offer my thoughts on the future of blogging. Now, I do not believe blogging is dead, not at all. There are 6 million blog posts released each day, and an estimated 1/3 of all websites are blogs. Now, personal blogging or personal diary blogging that is dead. That's been replaced by social media a long time ago. But blogging itself has evolved. It's now more marketing focused. Bloggers will do informative posts about evergreen topics that, or just topics that'll have longevity, and they'll update the blog posts. And people want to learn about a topic will go back to the post, and that'll increase the web traffic. And there are also blog networks that are still popular: Daily Kos, Huffington Post, Free Thought Blogs, the new Only Sky, and Pathos, where there are networks that are built around a focus or brand, and that they still attract readers. Blogs also are used to make websites sticky, and I know authors will sometimes have blogs on their websites to encourage people to come back to them. And for like nonfiction writers, they'll use their blogs to establish their expertise on a subject. So pretty much in short, blogs are still around. They still have a future, barring any major technical advancements. And we're not part of Free Thought Blogs is not part of a dying network. It's part of something that's still vibrant but evolving, and bloggers need to evolve. Thanks.
And we're back.
Thank you to William Brinkman. So now that we've talked about the sandwichness of blogs, perhaps let's move to something a little more concrete and talk about what we're going to do with ours, with Free Thought Blogs, which, as has been noted gleefully by detractors and somewhat more ruefully by those of us who actually like the site, it's kind of old. It's a bit crusty. It's definitely based on an assumption of the nature of blogging that is, let's say, a few years out of date, which is to say several millennia in internet time. So what do all of you think that we should be doing moving ahead? Christian?
We should obviously join Only Sky and get all the money. Isn't that the no?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah. No. Obviously, we need to update, and I think that's something we'll be talking about for a while now, that we need to update to more modern options. And I mean, but the basic form is still sound. The idea that we have a platform with different blogs, with different people running each their own blog, and no editorial oversight. I think that's still a good idea, and it's a much healthier environment for blogging than any of those more controlled environments that we see out there. Let's put it this way.
Well, that's a very interesting point. Free Thought Blogs rather bridled in the past over the behavior and influence of advertisers, especially when the particular advertiser at one point started to provide, let's say, inappropriately damaging ads in some cases. So it was bailed on. It's free right now, supported by the bloggers themselves and the occasional donation drive. It was interesting that Christian made a joke about the idea of joining Only Sky because Only Sky and its predecessor, budding off source, I don't know, mitosis parent, Pathos, is very much based on a commercial thing, and by and large, Free Thought Blogs is not. What do we think about that? How important is that level of purity in practice?
Well, to go back to the beginning, when we set up Free Thought Blogs, Ed and I were both thinking, first, how are we going to pay for this thing? How are we going to keep it going? And that's why we went with the advertising model. Is, yeah, let's find somebody who will sell ads on our site, and we can maintain that way. We can pay the writers, all that kind of good stuff. So that was right the front of our thinking. And then we gradually started abandoning that as the ads got increasingly desperate and obnoxious and loud and sexist. And so, and then we've been finding, yeah, we can get along just fine without the ads. just as long as we don't pay you guys.
There's always a catch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think Only Sky is starting off with that same set of assumptions that, oh, we got to find a revenue stream to keep it going. And yeah, it's possible to sail on your own without it.
well, yeah, there is sort of a fundamental different character to blogging when it does or does not have financial things. I think some of us on the call are old enough to remember Pepsi Gate over at Cyblogs, where there is a huge controversy over whether or not Pepsi should be allowed to have sponsored content on the blogs itself, and it really caused a lot of acrimony amongst the bloggers themselves, even in more subtle ways and all that. We're kind of used to actually seeing spam come in from people who are trying to promote their cookbook or some other sort of adventure they've got, some sort of venture they've got. By taking advantage of our sort of blogging network. Because there's so many sort of interlinking blogs and all that, we tend to do fairly well within Google's page ranking algorithm. And that makes us kind of a valuable territory if you want to actually get on search engine results. And so a lot of commercial projects would actually, a lot of people interested in pushing commercial products, I should say, would actually sort of, see if they could try and join us or something like that. As far as I know, none of them have snuck through, but
No, they're all trying to come through me, and I get like a dozen different emails and contacts from people who want to buy ads on Free Thought blogs every day. There was one just yesterday for they want to sell Bitcoin on our network. I should have put this to a vote of everyone. Do you want to do that?
What's stronger than nay?
Oh god, I really should sit down and write that series on Bitcoin at some point. I do actually have some personal knowledge of this, not in the forms that I actually have Bitcoin or anything like that. But, there are very few things a computer scientist can be an expert on. This is one of the things where I actually have some expertise.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, they keep pestering me, and my response usually is just I ignore them. I just hit the delete button and move on, because there's no way we're going to let Bitcoin peddle stuff on our network.
On the other hand, annoying as that is, it does prove that what you do, and by extension what we do, has value.
This is true, and it's been increasing. I've been kind of surprised that over the past year, I've been getting steadily more and more requests for this sort of thing. They're also offering me a fair bit of money to advertise their stuff on my YouTube channel, for instance. So I don't want to.
Yeah. But I mean, this is also an interesting point. None of us are being paid. But wouldn't it be great to have just that little bit of financial incentive to sort of focus our intent on the blog? If being, getting say $100 or even $1,000 a month for blogging was on the table, maybe some of us would be posting more or focusing more attention on it. Conversely, it does sort of torque things around. I've seen a ton of really great video essays on YouTube, and just really high quality content otherwise. And then they jump to an ad which has absolutely nothing to do with what that content is. And
yeah,
total mixed feels.
In terms of it being an incentive, it strikes me as very much a horses thing, because when I first joined Free Thought Blogs and got the hello and welcome to Free Thought Blogs email, and was told that I'd be earning a bit of money for it from the whole thing, which I hadn't expected, my first thought was, oh my god, no, I do not want this, because I don't want the pressure of feeling like my words be worth something. I just want to do this for fun. And that is definitely not going to be what everyone else thinks. And in fact, the other consideration for me, and I believe this is the case for you as well, Christian, is I very much do not need the complexities of earning money in the USA, the tax, what the hell would that do to the tax situation? So yeah, I've said from the start, don't pay me anything for this. But I'm sure there are people who would like to earn something for it. That said, they're generally the ones who have gone over to Pathos, or as it now is, only Sky instead.
Yeah, another twist on this too is that the way we were doing it before, it was sort of a central authority that those of us running Free Thought blogs, that was me and Ed, we were the recipients of the money, and then we could, out of our kindness, disperse it to all the bloggers. And I kind of object to that as well. I would think that, as it stands now, if an individual blogger wants to monetize their content, and they want to say, okay, I'm gonna run ads, and we don't have a mechanism for this right now, but if we did in a redesign of the site, if they want to run ads on their own blog and get the money to them, that would be great. I mean, I would not object to that. So like right now, I've got this Patreon that brings in some money and is actually paying for the network as a whole. And I advertise that on my blog too. And that's commercializing my content, isn't it? Sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Consider how much you probably made.
It isn't a matter of speaking. I think there's a huge difference between, because Patreon basically it's asking for tips. That's money that comes in from people who already like what you're doing and wish you to continue to do it, which is very different from advertising and related things where a company is going to say, we like what you're doing, make it sound more like us.
Uh-huh.
For what it's worth, I'm with Sarah. I actually really like that there's a relatively low pressure, and actually the fact that has been low pressure has contributed to some extent to the changes we've experienced recently, because quite often it was me pushing in the back channel to be doing, along with HJ of course, be doing things like, oh, let's do Discord stuff, we should do this blog thing, we should do this video version as well, which means I'm contributing in unorthodox blogging ways more than the usual bloggage, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and none of those things are revenue streams for us. So it's not like, we're saying you can be as creative as you want, and we can do all these different things, and you don't have to do it because it's profitable. Do it because it's fun, because it fulfills some other goal that you've got.
So with about 10 minutes left to go in our usual plan, what sorts of changes does everyone think would be best we're all agreed we want to continue Free Thought blogs, and that I think we're all agreed blogging is a thing that should continue to exist. So what kinds of UI or UX changes do you all think would be ideal to see on an updated version of Free Thought blogs?
I know a number of people have suggested mobile compatibility. Essentially, a lot of people read blogs nowadays on mobile phones. It's kind of vital to sort of hit that target, whereas our template was sort of designed before that to some extent. I mean, it's okay on a mobile phone, but I'm really not in love with it, quite frankly. So,
we have a template from the era of flip phones.
Yeah, needs a little bit of revision.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things we've always struggled with, we've always strived for, is more integration across the network. Because like right now we've got our sidebar that lists all the blogs and all the recent posts, and we got our main page, and that's kind of it. It'll be kind of nice if we could get more interactivity between different blogs. At the blogger's request, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's actually a good point. I was recently writing an update on the BBC situation. Long story, go read Reprobate Spreadsheet. And I was actually linking to some other people's blogs, and I actually had to go and manually get their URLs, Wouldn't it be great if I could just sort of say, hey, start typing into a search box, I want to reference this blogger's URL or, this blogger's post, and it'll just pop up. It's a minor thing, but it does kind of help create sort of more of a community of bloggers. Sort of like how each blog has its own community with the commenters and all that. So.
Yes,
Except yours, where it's only the ones who can solve where the cryptid of HJ comments actually live.
Exactly. Consider it a little puzzle you must solve. A proof that you're human, essentially, to get in and figure out where the comment section is.
Yeah, and along those lines, we mentioned Tumblr earlier, and Tumblr makes it kind of easy to do a one-click reblog of another post that you like. So it would be kind of neat if all of our blogs could also have a section where the blogger just hit a button and said, hey, this is cool. Let's link to it here. And then just do it automatically. Just one button, boom, there it is.
That's really interesting because that's a feature specifically that Facebook and Twitter have as well, and Tumblr, obviously, but blogs don't traditionally.
Yeah.
No concept of retweet.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that would also help. There's a bunch of things that were changed in the last decade or so that kind of diminished the effectiveness of blogs. And one is the abandonment of RSS, and that kind of hurts. But also that we're still stuck with the old HTML href sort of thing to link to other blogs. Having another mechanism would be kind of nice.
That actually that's actually an interesting thing about that. As you correctly said, that kind of hurts. I'm sorry, there's cars honking outside. I'm sorry if that goes through. But that might actually to some degree explain why podcasts are kind of won over so much, because they can still do feeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and technically I think we still have our own feeds there. It's just RSS readers are not as popular when it comes to blogs for some reason.
Right.
I'm not sure why.
Oh yeah, we've all got the RSS. It's right there in our you just stick /RSS on the end of your URL and boom, you've got the RSS feed. So it's pretty easy.
I think you'll find
not there. The readers
yes, I think you'll find the issue there, HJ, is the platform effect, where people don't want to be installing extra apps and extra software just to be able to consume some kind of content that isn't obvious. They just want to go to something on the web or in their usual browsers or whatever and go, oh, there it is, click, which is the one thing that RSS was very bad at. It was always something that required some kind of separate reader.
And there's also the accident that Google RSS reader became very big and popular, and then Google killed it off, and nobody's actually sort of come up with replacements. So the premier app people sort of use, which is easy to get on Android phones and all that, just kind of went poof, and with it, sort of the technology kind of took a major hit, just because Google is such a big player within this arena.
Any final thoughts, Sarah?
Not from me. I think I've
Mine is a complete blank. Okay. That's okay. We can all understand that. Christian?
Yes, remember to unmute. I mean, the kind of the only thought is, yes, we need to move over. I think we have some really good ideas on how to move over to something more modern, and mobile is part of it, but also keeping the good stuff we still have. And yes, we all agree that blogs are here to stay. Otherwise, why would we be blogging?
Well, we'd be somethinging. I mean, we want to make noise on the internet. It's just a question of how exactly. Should we have reactions, things like that, for comments for blogs?
Yeah, there used to be a really common thing where when you link to somebody, the WordPress software would recognize that, and they would send a ping out to the person that you referenced. And then if it was another blog, they had software that would recognize that, and they'd append that like a comment at the end of your blog. I haven't seen that happening much lately.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I actually get those on my things, but of course, because I've got comments disabled, they never show. It's just they pop up into my, queue and say, hey, we're doing this. I think it died out maybe 6 months, a year ago, and I'm not sure that's because A, I went fairly quiet with the blog at that point, or B, some technical thing behind the scenes flipped and they're not being sent anymore.
Yeah, or something. Or it may have been that a lot of people disabled it because it was a great way for trolls to intrude on your blog.
And advertising spam too. A lot of that.
Oh yeah. Oh, now it's coming back to me. Yes.
Sorry about that. If it takes the sting away, I actually meant reactions like likes, the little thumbie up thing.
Oh.
You mean like Discus does?
Yeah.
Does Discus do it? Probably. Certainly like Facebook used to before Facebook added all sorts of things that made it easier to troll. Certainly like Twitter does.
Yeah,
because we were talking about
the same sort
we
of
were
thing
talking
with,
about wanting
Discus.
reblogs. So that's the other thing
Yeah.
that traditionally goes with it in the modern cesspool of social media.
Right. We actually, back in the ancient days before WordPress, before science blogs, all that kind of stuff, I had a feature that I could enable like that on my blog. And I actually polled the readership to ask, do you want this? And there was just such a howl of protest. Do not put thumbs up, thumbs down things on anything because they so distort the conversation. So I quickly shut that down.
I mean, thumbs down is not disabled, but it's not shown any longer on YouTube for a reason.
Right.
Because it's a tool used by trolls, basically.
Yeah, and
but
of course, Twitter never had thumbs down, despite how much that's definitely a tool used by trolls.
Yes, but I think it is. I think there is a widget or something to do that on WordPress. So it's something we could. If there was a lot of popularity for it, we could, in our future redesign, that's something that could come back.
I'm just throwing it out there because it is a question of modernization, for good or for bad. That's the sort of feature that people tend to expect on content they find online these days. And I would suggest, no offense to your once upon a time readership, but I would suggest that the opinion of a group of people on a blog 20 years ago might not be terribly relevant to the question of what we do now.
You think? This we're not discussing eternal rules here. Okay.
I completely disagree. For the unknowing, I was one of those people the most active commenters from Regular back then. So obviously, everything I decided back then was very.
All right, they're irrelevant except specifically Christian. How's that?
All right.
Deal. Yeah,
And
my main concern would be that the things would be frangulated immediately.
Pharyngula would be pharyngulated, but everyone else probably wouldn't be. Ideally, maybe we could get some more traffic from there.
Yeah, that's also kind of where my mind is at. I've got the bulk of the traffic coming in, but I would love to be able to just easily say, go over there and go to this other blog, and so has cogent commentary on this, and be able to do it by not having to write a whole blog post to say it. I'd like some micro-blogging.
All right, so we're probably going to head in a direction like that. And on that note, we are out of time. So there we go. Blogging's clearly still around, and we're going to modernize as soon as we can figure out what we're doing. We've already got our arguably most technically adept blogger who you couldn't pay him enough to show up on the live thing, but he's very, very good at what he does, is looking into our updates right now. Got some sandboxes, so we're working on the redesign and the recreation, and it'll be along when we can pull it off. So from HJ, Christian, Sarah, PZ, the recorded ghost of Brinkman, and me, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.